Welcome back to Wine with Weta. Today's guest is Kathryn Denny, a mum, an advocate, and a powerful voice in the disability community. Kathryn has openly shared her family's journey raising her son, Jaska, helping others better understand the realities of a disability, the power of AAC, and the importance of ensuring that every person has a voice. More recently, Kathryn has spoken publicly about the experiences that families have with navigating the NDIS and the need for systems that truly support the people with disability. Today, we'll be talking about motherhood, communication, advocacy, resilience, and the lessons that Kathryn and Jaska have taught so many of us about connection and belonging. Kathryn, thank you so much for joining me on Wine with Weta today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here and
Kathryn,
opinion out
as you
about these topics.
so many topics here to discuss today. You tell the listeners about yourself and your family as well as Jaska.
So basically, I'm a mum of three. I have ADHD myself as well, which was only diagnosed, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago or so. And yeah, so I've got three kids. My eldest is obviously Jassy, who is ASD level 3. He's non-speaking. He's got GDD. He's got provisional diagnosis for an intellectual disability, which we can get into that later because I have strong thoughts and opinions around that with non-speakers. And then I've also got two toddlers. So I've got Lakey, he is 3, and I've got Surya, who's 1, and those two can yap all day. So for me, I was a first-time parent, obviously having Jassy. I truly feel in my heart that like each one of my kids were just perfectly picked for our family. I cannot explain it. Obviously, when we were trying to conceive with Jaska, we had completely different vision for what our life was going to look like. And then he came along and he was just like perfect, the cheekiest, happiest little boy and so beautiful. And then just crazy as well. So cheeky and crazy and into everything. And to us, it was just normal, obviously. And then after we had a good gap. I think it was maybe like a 5-year gap actually between Jassy and then when we started trying for Lakey. And so we tried. We ended up having a miscarriage, and then we tried again, and we conceived Laker. Didn't find out the gender. Really wanted a girl. I was very open about that too because I was like, I just want one boy, one girl, be done. And kept it a surprise, gave birth, and it was a beautiful boy, and I wouldn't change it for the world. And I had no gender disappointment once he was born either. But he came out the complete like opposite to Jassy with his blonde hair, blue eyes, whereas Jassy had this dark hair, and we were just like, what the heck? But it was so beautiful. It was a very weird experience, obviously. When I was pregnant with Lakey is when we were going through the whole diagnosis journey with Jassy. So going through that is hard enough as is, especially when you're a first-time parent because it rocks your world and you're like, wait a minute, no, like the whole poem about going to Holland when you expect to go to Paris,
Yes.
whatever. I'm experiencing that. I'm like, no, we're meant to be in Paris. What is going on? And I'm also pregnant. Mind you, I've also got a niece who was about 5 months younger than Jassy, who had been diagnosed with ASD, level 2. And then by this point, I'm like pregnant with Laker, and I'm also noticing signs in my nephew, Hamish. And I'm like, he was only about 8 months. And I'm like, I could feel it. And also familiar with it by this point. And I was just like, what does that mean for Lakey? I was just like very scared. And yeah, we kind of had that mindset switch and really, I don't know, I just kind of embraced it. And I just knew whatever was meant to be would be. So I was completely at peace with like, if Lakey has autism as well, like that's just what we are destined for, And then obviously a lot went on between that, but then we fell pregnant with baby number 3, which was a complete surprise. And we were terrified, like
Yeah, of course.
genuinely terrified. We were just thinking like, how are we meant to do this? Yeah. And then we did it anyway.
This episode of Wine with Weta is proudly brought to you by Onesie. If you're a parent, carer, or allied health professional, supporting individuals with disability and additional needs, you'll appreciate what Onesie is all about. Onesie creates adaptive clothing designed to make everyday care easier while promoting comfort, dignity, and independence for individuals and their families. They're also a registered NDIS provider supporting families across Australia. As a special offer for Wine with Weeda listeners, you can receive 15% off all Onesie branded products by using the code WINE plus onesie at checkout. Now let's get into today's conversation.
If you're a bit woo-woo, I was like doing a manifestation challenge at the time. I think I was on like day 7. And so I was like, clearly the universe is like, sent us this baby for a reason, like just chill, like it's meant to be. And a psychic did tell me I would manifest a girl, which was just so weird because obviously we weren't planning a baby at all, but I was doing a manifestation challenge when we fell pregnant with her. So then we were pregnant with her and we went through the roughest of rough we had ever been through when I was pregnant with her. And I was just like, cool, we're fucked, basically.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, what the hell? Like, it was honestly really, really, really dark and rough. And it was really hard for us because Jassy had always been the cheekiest, happiest, loving, most affectionate little boy. And just like, it felt like suddenly he didn't even have his happiness. And we were like, oh my God, this is just a nightmare. And so, on top of like raising the kids, you're also advocating to these medical professionals who are trying to dismiss it as autism. It's no big deal. We went through a lot of like daycare issues with Jassy and obviously his support needs and, all of the emotions that come with that, being non-speaking and the trust you have to put into the centres and your worries and everything. And before, obviously, if we rewind a bit, when Jassy was only about a year old is when I kind of started in content creation space. So before that, I was actually a makeup artist, freelance makeup artist, had a huge belly doing makeup clients. And I loved it. Like, I loved doing makeup. And then it was great when I took maternity leave with Jassy, kind of could, like set my own schedule and ease my way back into work and that kind of thing. And then COVID hit and I started doing makeup videos on TikTok. I did like Disney makeup challenges and all these sorts of things, and they just like and again, really weird. I was doing the same manifestation 21-day abundance challenge during that time. Never even social media wasn't a thing back then. I mean, it was a thing, but it wasn't like you didn't see full-time content creators actually making a living back
It
then.
wasn't a job. It was more, I
No.
think, maybe a way for people to cope with COVID. It's to connect because we
Yeah.
didn't have that face-to-face connection. So, but how could they still be during lockdown
Yeah.
and
I mean,
different content? Even Instagram Live started then, I think.
yeah, it just started kind of popping
Yeah.
off because everyone was at home and consuming content.
Mm,
Like, that was all you could really
mm,
do. And so I
mm.
started posting these makeup videos, and I remember it just blew up overnight. And I was just like, what the heck? Like, at this time in the manifestation challenge, I'm just trying to manifest money because I was earning $0 during COVID being a
Mm,
makeup
mm, mm,
artist, not
mm.
essential, obviously. And to a house. Like, Josh and I really, really wanted to buy a house. So we were trying to manifest these things. And I'm like, woo woo, as I'm like, you know. Meanwhile, we're still struggling with Jassy things, and I'm thinking it's completely normal, like all these behaviors we were dealing with, like, it's normal no, it's definitely not normal in hindsight. um, but yeah, blew up overnight. I remember, I think the first night I hit like 25K overnight, and I was just like, what?
Oh,
I was like, Josh,
it's
what the heck? I
huge.
couldn't believe it. And then I think I posted like a Tinkerbell video, and that just went wild. Like, every time I'd refresh, it was like up and up and up and up and up, like just blew up.
Wow.
And then it just kept growing. And I think I would have hit around like, I want to say at least 500K during my
And
makeup
that's on
era.
TikTok.
TikTok.
And did
Yeah.
that, you know how now TikTok is then aligned with Insta? Did you have that connection
So,
between the two?
well, I mean, I loved like during COVID, I was into like the real like aesthetic photos. Like, I loved
Yeah.
taking like aesthetic vibey photos and whatnot, but I didn't have like a following on there.
Yeah.
But I would try, and I started going from obviously like the daily makeup series into like vlogs, and I kind of post like day in
Mm.
the life vlogs, like, and obviously Jackie was like only so little, and people started kind of following along that, which I'm really glad I did. I had the awareness of like, I'm a mom and this makeup thing is very time consuming, and I don't know how much I could stay committed to only
Mm.
makeup content. So I wanted to kind of like expand my niche, if that makes sense. And that's why
Yeah.
I started vlogging day in the life, because I mean, I wasn't necessarily thinking of it from a business perspective of like, oh, I could get brand deals. I was thinking maybe like I might get gifted some stuff. And like when brands started reaching out to me, I was
Mm.
like
Was
insane.
Jaska diagnosed at this stage, or people were watching the young version of
Yeah.
him through? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it
interesting.
was
Yeah.
kind of like, I think there would have been a lot of mums out there who were familiar with ASD watching him going, "Oh, he's autistic, doll," and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah.
like, Jesse's done this and whatever." I think I definitely like overshared a little bit, obviously not grasping the. I don't know. I feel like it's still hard for me to fully understand the impact of how many people I reach, because it's hard to like
Mm.
not look at social media and just kind of see numbers, and it almost feels like pretend in a way, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And it's not until you meet like mums, or like, I've bumped into people when I've been at like the hospital with Jassy, and they come up and they're like, "Oh God, I love your content." I'm just like, like, you're real. You like, there's
You're
actually
real.
real people
You
out there
exist.
who, yeah, like actually follow and they resonate, and like we actually make an impact in their lives. And it's kind of, it really is trippy to like wrap your head around. So yeah, that was 2020, and during the manifestation challenge, like we bought a house and started like earning
Mm.
more than I had ever earned at that time, and I was just like, "Oh my God, this is real." And so I started like completely rewiring my mindset at this point.
Good on
And
you.
also
Yeah.
I was struggling with like postpartum anxiety and like that postpartum rage where, like the dogs would just like be breathing. I'd be like, oh, or like, I
Yeah.
mean, to be quite frank, they did put me through hell when I was postpartum. I like came home one time, Iggy was not D-sex, so that's like my fault. But yeah, she had like a nappy on, and Wiz had completely shredded the nappy. I'm like walking in with a newborn baby. I'm like, but yeah, the
I
whole
didn't
like,
manifest this.
yeah, I'm like, I did not do this. But I definitely, so after I'd finished that 21-day abundance challenge, which I got like cold hard proof from that it was real and it worked. And so that really helped with like rewiring my mindset. Josh still thought I was a bit of a weirdo, because like we're going for a house, I'd come home with these hauls and he would be like, "You can't be spending money like this when we go for," I was like, "The more you give, the more you'll receive, and it's going to come back to us tenfold." And I was just like, oh.
He's
But it
like
was
just a traditional income earner.
yeah, and he's just like, "What the heck?" But yeah, I just kept getting proof and proof and proof. And then we bought this house, we moved in here, and it was like such a huge achievement for us. That was start of 2021. And by this point is when we started going, something's up here with Jussie, like
Mm.
it was really hard because we weren't around many other kids, really. The
Really?
only
Yeah.
other kid I was around was my niece, who also was autistic. So, like,
Mm.
it wasn't until we were around another family friend's little boy, and he was like 6 months older than Jassy. And I want to say either Jassy or the little boy was 18 months old. And Josh and I were like babysitting him and them together. And I just remember him coming up, sitting on the lounge, and Coco Melon was on, and he just goes, "Apple." And I was like, "He just said
Mm.
apple." Like, I couldn't believe it. And I'm like, "He just said apple." And then Jassy always was such a messy eater. He'd like shove so much food in his mouth. Again, me just thinking that's normal.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I'm like, I'm about to give him a banana because he's wanting a banana. And I'm like, "You just have to take a really little bite," because I'm thinking, "Oh my God, this kid's gonna like shovel the banana in his mouth. He's gonna choke, and it's not my kid. I'm stressing." So I'm like, "Take a really little bite," to both of them. And then he just takes this little mouse bite, and then Jassy just shoves the whole banana in. I was like,
Mm.
he's like proper understanding what I'm saying. Like, you know what I mean? I started kind of like piecing together, wait a minute, like he's fully understanding exactly what I'm saying. And I said to Josh, it's almost like Jesse's just this cute little like robot who like gets around, but he doesn't fully understand or process what
Understand.
we're saying. And also, like, you had to spell out lollies around this kid. Whereas like I could open a pack of lollies like near Jesse and he wouldn't fully, and
Yeah.
that's when I started going, something's up. And I think I said to my sister at the time, and her little girl was kind of like making vocalizations, like she would say z z z for like Zeus, or
Mm.
mum, like, just kind of words here and there. But I remember saying to her, like, don't you think it's weird that like both Jassy and Talia are not speaking yet? And then she was like, oh no, Talia like speaks. She says this word and this word and this word. And I was like, yeah, but like this little boy, he says whatever word you tell him to say, like, and
Mm,
now with Surya, like, she is the same. Like, she will say any word you tell her to say. She's singing
mm,
along to Disney princess songs. Like, I didn't fully understand the drastic difference of what Jassie's development looks like versus what it should have looked like for a neurotypical child at that age. And it really bothers me now when I look back at that first pediatrician appointment, because I'm like, dude, how could you have not seen that? Because that first
mm.
pediatrician took one look at Jassy, who was super cheeky, made eye contact and smart, and like he had everyone wrapped around their little finger instantly when you'd meet him because he was just so lovable. And like he just took one look at him and was like, nah, just ADHD and a speech delay. He said he's blowfly in a bottle. He's like, if anyone said he has autism, I'd tell them they're crazy. And like he said those exact words. So Josh and I kind of left feeling, obviously first time parents, okay, it's just ADHD, that we
Relief.
can handle
Yeah.
that,
Mm.
and also seeing my niece be diagnosed, she presented so different to Jassy. Like they were chalk and cheese. She was very emotionally dysregulated. You couldn't even look at her without her screaming. Like the pediatrician had written irrational fear of auntie on the report, because when I would rock up with Jassy, I think Jassy contributed it to as well, because obviously she didn't want to be touched. Jassy would be sitting on
Mm,
her. Like they were
mm.
complete opposites in every way. Or she'd be out the backyard looking at a peg, dropping it, looking at the peg, dropping it. Jassy would be down the slide on the bike, like complete opposites. So when she got
Different.
this
Mm.
level 2 diagnosis, we were like, oh, well, Jassy won't even be on the spectrum then. Just like obviously not realizing it is a spectrum and how that
Spectrum.
looks. But
Mm,
we were kind of like, oh, well, if she's only level 2, and the PED said she was actually level 1, but diagnosed 2 for funding. So we were like, oh, well, Darcy wouldn't be then. Then when the PED said,
mm.
no, he's not autistic, he's just ADHD, we're like, okay, yeah, we can swallow that. He's like, put him in daycare, he'll catch up, whatever. So we put him in daycare. And we we're very open
Sorry, I
with
don't
daycare.
mean to interrupt. For
Mm,
anyone listening, putting a child in daycare and assuming he'll just catch up is a massive red flag. Massive red flag for communication development. Yes, exposure to other children, and yes, interactions with other children does support a child's communication, but a child does not catch up without the right intervention. And it makes me mad to hear, firstly, how you were dismissed,
mm,
how your concerns weren't actually understood. And even
mm,
if you did present concerns to the pediatrician that I think, my son has autism, could we go through the DSM-5? And
mm,
could we go through all of these characteristics to see, is it aligned with the diagnosis? I'm not here to be in denial. I'm here for acceptance and to move
yeah.
forward. And this story is so common with
Mm-hmm.
many young families and many families with young children around the 18-month to 2 years of age, where the communication may be a bit delayed, but just because that's the case doesn't mean it doesn't outrule the diagnosis. And I just get mad hearing pediatricians telling families that. Yeah.
And I don't understand it, because I'm like, now that we obviously were 7 years in, and I look back and I'm like, it was so blatantly obvious. Like,
Mm,
how did you not see it, dude? Like, it's actually really frustrating. And I'm like, you need to get out of this job, get out of it.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how many kids have you denied a diagnosis to because of your lack of education around what autism can look like? But
Yeah.
I think the issue was Jassy was cheeky and social, which goes against
Mm.
autism. It doesn't fit the
What
criteria.
the narrative of what
What they
autism is, we're
Yeah,
highly dysregulated, avoiding reduced eye contact, lack of participation, and the
not
fact
sitting
that your
there
son
hand
was,
clapping, you're not
yeah, and
autistic.
not
What
spinning, and so
Yeah.
the general perception of autism is disruption, is lack of engagement, but just because a child doesn't present with that does not mean he doesn't have autism. So
Mm,
really being open and mindful, and as they say, just because you know one person with autism doesn't mean you know autism,
yeah,
and it's a
100%.
spectrum. It's a big
Yeah,
spectrum.
I
Who
don't
did
think
you
I've
see
done that.
following that pediatrician? At what point did you think I need to get another opinion now? Was it from the feedback from childcare?
So the daycare were good for that. The room he was in, I loved. He was in a mainstream daycare, obviously. But
Mm,
I was very open of like, I don't think he's gonna sit at lunchtime. I don't think he's just gonna like lay on the bed and go to sleep with the other kids and like da 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 da. And two of the teachers, I believe, in that room had neurodivergent kids themselves. So
Okay.
they just like he,
Different
yeah,
lens.
really made deep connections with them. I loved that space. It was beautiful for him. But yeah, obviously we said to him, like, look, we know something's up. We are booking in a pediatrician appointment. And so they gave us like a report. And I do remember as well, like the report they gave us, I was kind of like, no, that's not true. You kind of on the defense, you want to it's a coping mechanism for a first time
Yes.
parent. You kind of do try downplay how hard it really is because it's normal to you, but also you're scared of like the diagnosis, whatever. But there were things on there where I'm like, I don't really agree with that. Like, unable to like pass an object between two hands. I'm like, no, he could do that. So there were things where I'm like, but they were definitely supported during the process. And I think they did say, yeah, we think, you should definitely get them checked. So that was the first paid how the first paid appointment went. And then 6 months later, we had the follow up, which was just kind of telehealth. And I said to him, Jassie's been in daycare. He's not made any progression developmentally. He's still doing this, which was like another huge red flag, sensory seeking behavior, which he again just completely dismissed. And that's when he had said I said, I was getting comments on TikTok by this point because I was saying, what's going on? He's still not speaking. I'm sharing this behind the
Sharing.
scenes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember getting comments being like, could it be autism? Could it be apraxia of speech and things like this? And I'm like saying this to the ped on the call. I said, could it be autism or could it be apraxia of speech? And he's like, I could diagnose him, but it'd just be for funding, and you've already got funding. Because at this point, we had applied for
There's
NDIS because he
funding.
was
Yeah.
developmentally delayed in enough areas. So he was in speech therapy.
Mm-mm.
And he's like, it's just a label. And like, he literally said that. And he made me feel as though I wanted this label. I'm like, you do realize I don't want to be sitting here talking to you about my child's deficits and struggles. I wish my child was developing typically and I wasn't talking to you. I'm not some mum who's desperate for a label for my kid. Like, that was the vibe. And again, we kind of left with like nothing but just ADHD and speech delay. So it wasn't until I was doing a
How
makeup
old is
class.
Jaska at this stage? It's two?
He would have been, no, he was about 3.5,
Okay.
I reckon, when we started that.
Okay.
No,
Yep.
maybe 2 years, 9 months, I want to say. And then I
Yep.
think I had this like moment where I was speaking with a makeup client about the situation, and she's like, your boy sounds so similar to my girl. Like, she was really social and cheeky. So the ped just like completely ruled out autism. Because that's what he said, is that he did not meet criteria for autism because he's too social. And I'm like, but he was,
Mm.
he would like go up to strangers on the beach and be like dancing with complete strangers. He'd go home with them if they grabbed his hand and took him. There
Yeah.
was no
Yeah. Yeah.
stranger danger awareness. Like, he didn't have any fear. Like, just so many red flags that I'm like, how did he not see it? So anyway, I'm like pregnant with baby number 2 at this point. We kind of know something's going on, but also we're just like, it's just ADHD. And then this client's like, you need to book an ADOS test. Like, go see a psychologist, get an ADOS test. She's like, they'll tell you what's going on. So then I book in this ADOS test, and tell him he's non-speaking, whatever. And I remember going to that appointment, and just from the very first appointment where Jussie wasn't even there, I was just like answering a lot of questions and yada yada yada. Straight off the bat from that first appointment, she was like, yeah, like he definitely seems like he has autism. Like, and I was like, okay, yeah. And I'm like thinking, how am I going from this ped being so sure, saying I would tell anyone they're crazy if they said he had autism, to now this psychologist telling me like, yeah, he definitely seems like he does. I'm like, so anyway, we go into this appointment. Also, when she had asked me, does he have repetitive play? I was like, no, because I'm seeing Talia, my niece's repetitive play of this, versus
Yeah.
Jaska
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
down the side on the bike and this and that. And I'm like, no, he doesn't have repetitive play. And then we get into this appointment, and it's just like different toys section laid out throughout the room. And she is essentially just observing how he interacts and plays with the toys and watching him. She'll call his name, see if he responds, blows bubbles, just that kind of vibe. And I remember watching him and kind of like understanding what she meant by repetitive play for the first time, because he would play with everything in the room, but he would play with it the same way every time,
Mm.
or he wouldn't play with it in a functional way. So for example, like he'd grab the toy and he'd like post it through the whole of like this little table rather than like playing with it how it was intended to be played with, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
if it got stuck, he couldn't really communicate to ask for help either, just like things like that. And so I remember it was at the end of that point where she essentially was like, yeah, like ASD level 3 and provisional diagnosis for an intellectual impairment. And I was just like, okay. And
Wow.
I think I might have been like 16 weeks pregnant, and I just got back into the car and bawled. Like, I was a mess. I think my brain was mentally prepared for autism. I don't know if I was quite prepared to hear level 3. And obviously, the levels are based off how much support the individual
Mm.
requires. And like, he was a toddler, so he still did require substantial support, but obviously more than the average toddler his age for sure. But it was the provisional diagnosis of intellectual impairment that I think scared me the most, because I was like, what does that mean? Like,
Yeah.
that was the first time where I was really like, what does that mean for his future, for our future? Like, that just completely rattled me. And then, as I said, I was seeing my like signs of my nephew, and I'm pregnant. I'm thinking, what's that mean for this baby? Like, I just was spiraling and just really, yeah, like, I can't explain what it feels like when you're a parent, especially a first time parent, but you get that diagnosis. No matter how prepared you feel, it just hits different when you see it on paper
Yeah.
or you hear it from their mouth. You're just kind of like, oh, so I send so much love to like the parents that are going through it, because I completely understand that feeling. And you essentially grieve a life you imagined for your child, whilst also you just you don't know what's going on. You like, it's a whole diagnosis for a disability you know nothing about. It's scary. Like, you just feel everything, right? And I remember just like, I couldn't even look at Jassy without crying. Like, I would just look at him and just like
Mm.
cry. I just felt so bad for him. And then at that time too, we were having a bit of dramas with the daycare. And I remember, because he had switched rooms by this point, he'd gone to like the
Yeah,
next
'cause he's
people up.
older. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I remember the teachers in that room were not as like, I just would go pick Jassy up, and you'd look at her and she'd have this face of like, oh, like she's had the
Mm.
hardest day. And she
Hard to
kind of started just
stay.
making comments of like, as in, he's not really suited for this space, whatever. Then I obviously had the ADOS test. We gave him the information. The ADOS test said he had the cognitive abilities of a 10-month-old. And I remember just being like, no, like, how? A 10-month-old is not like,
Mm.
because at this point I had videos of Jassy at age 3 and 4, like, completing shape color puzzles, like manipulating the pieces efficiently, like boom, 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 boom. He knew his shapes, he knew his colors. He had iPad games where he would like see a fruit flash and they would be sliding past and he would match easily. He would sort vehicles onto a road, boats onto water. Like, he had cognitive abilities there. It's like
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
expressive language was not there. And so when she's saying 10-month cognitive abilities, I'm like, that makes no sense to me. And then I had
Mm.
Lakey, saw him at 10 months, and Lakey, I could say, where's the book? He'd look for the book and he'd grab the book. Or I could say, give me a kiss. He'd give me
Yeah.
a kiss. So I kind of started to go, oh, I know what they mean. And I almost believed them for a second there when I started watching like his development. But now, knowing what I know, I look back, I'm like, no, I understand what they mean in terms of the expressive language skills of a 10-month-old, but I do not believe his cognitive abilities are of a 10 month
Yeah.
old. I know he understands far more than anyone would believe. Like, you
Yeah.
can't tell me he's completing these shapes and color puzzles yet has the abilities of a 10-month-old. Like, I just was like, you're wrong. Like, but
It's like they're following a a developmental checklist for the age groups, but we're not celebrating or emphasizing what the child can do. So, yes, he cannot do what a typical 10-month would do in some areas, but he's able to do color matching and shape identification that's typical for a 2-year-old or even for a 2.5-year-old. Let's talk about that rather than what he can't do. And I think the more that we celebrate the child's ability, it actually puts a positive touch to the diagnosis journey and intervention.
yeah,
That, well, my child's not only he's not acting like a 10-month-old, he has the capability of XYZ. So let's talk
yeah.
about that now. Let's aim for that. Let's start talking about these so we can have the optimism and hope that anything is possible with him.
I think that is like one of the hardest things, especially in the beginning as well, is when you start getting the assessments and the reports and they are very deficit
Mm,
based, which they have
yes,
to be.
they have to
Um,
be.
and you want them to be if you want the support from NDIS. But in the beginning, obviously, you're just like, because you're a first time parent, you're trying to downplay these things. And then you see the reports and you're like,
Mm,
oh my God, yeah, our reality is actually really, really hard. Like, and you kind of
mm,
see all the checklists are scored high, 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 or like, and you just like, oh my God, it just is really, really hard to swallow. But I kind of switched my mindset again, and I looked at him and I'm like, why do I feel sorry for him? Like, he is the happiest boy I know. Like, why
Yeah.
do I feel sorry for him? Because I think my thought process is kind of like, so like if he's got a provisional diagnosis for an intellectual disability, he's never gonna have like he's never gonna drive, he's never gonna be independent, he's never gonna have a family, he's never gonna get married, like all these things. And I'm like, they're all just like social norm constructs. Like, he doesn't care about
Mm.
like, he does not care about that. He cares about being happy. And I'm like, I
Mm.
really just like still now, all I care about is his happiness. I'm like, even if he never talks, I don't care as long as he's happy. So it's
Mm.
like that became the priority. And we obviously shifted the goal from speaking, because we were kind of like, any day now he's going to talk. And I will say too, like back then he was babbling like, mum, 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 dad, dad, dad. Even when we had Lakey, he had the baby boy, he's going, bab, bab, bab. Like, he would make
Oh.
these vocalizations, not on command, but like more as like a vocal stim. But he would make vocalizations for sure. And there was his nonverbal communication that he has now, he had back then, but I didn't know it. I just kind of watch back old videos and I'm like, oh, he was like communicating non-verbally. Like, for example,
Mm.
coughing is like one of his like kind of frustration communications. So there's a video of him
Mm.
going, mum, 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 like over and over. And he's just like coughing because he's just going, shut up. I can't talk. Shut up. Like,
Yeah.
stop trying to make me
Yeah.
say mum. And I watch back, and obviously I didn't like think anything of him coughing. I just thought he was coughing. But I look back now and I'm like, no, he was saying, shut up, mum. Like, stop. I'm
Yeah.
not saying mum. Like,
At what
um,
point did you have that shift to redefining what speaking means to Jaska? What was that? Was it through the birth of Lakey where he was able to communicate in a way that is different to other children?
I want to say it's so hard. I feel like that time of like between when I was like Jesse's diagnosis, being pregnant, having Lakey, daycare stuff, it all feels like such a blur. So it's hard
Mm.
for me to kind of pinpoint when, but like I definitely one of the first things we did was the Hanan program, which I think is
Mhm.
like Hanan program more than words or something like
More than
that.
words. Yep.
Yeah,
Or it
and
takes two to talk. Yeah.
yeah, so
There's a
that
few.
Josh and I did
Mm.
that together, and that was one of the very first things we did with speech therapy. So I feel like that I would recommend that to any parent to try, and because obviously a lot about the parent learning and implementing these strategies. So I think that's really important, because how you talk and interact with a neurodivergent child is completely different to a neurotypical. But also, I spoke to my neurotypical kids the same way I did with Jassy, and I do think that
Mm.
contributed to how almost advanced their speech seemed to me.
Yes.
But also,
Yes.
even others who watched my vlogs would be like, oh my God, I can't believe how much like he talks, and like Surya already singing, and like, yeah. So, but I do remember kind of, I don't know, we started introducing PEX cards, and very early on I realized there were other forms of communication. I still and will never lose hope that he will speak one day.
Mhm.
But I think I do remember though reading, I think it would have been after the call with that pediatrician the second time and getting the diagnosis, wrapping my head around intellectual disability, researching. I remember I found an article that said if a child doesn't speak verbally by 4, then statistics show they'll probably never speak. And I think he was
Mm.
like 3 years, 9 months by this point. So I'm like, oh my God, like when he, like, it was just
You've got a
scary.
few
It
months
was
to go.
stressful because
Mm.
in my head, I'm like seeing my niece go from non-speaking to getting therapy to progressing and speaking. And she's now in mainstream school. She can make friends. She can talk. She can play, She obviously very much has her struggles still being ASD level 2 for sure. But like, it was so hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that, watching them as babies and toddlers, we were like, oh, he doesn't have it if she's only level 2, to then seeing her progress and Jassy stay stagnant or progress but then regress. And it's always been like that for Jassy. It's kind of like he'll take 2 steps forward and then 3 steps back. And it's like we
Mm.
make progress and then it's gone before you know it. And so I was just petrified. And I remember reading just I can't even remember what it was. It would have been like a blog post. I think that the mum might have been Cooper. I don't know if you follow her.
Yes,
God,
finding
her
Cooper's
content.
voice. Yeah.
Yes, her
She's
content. I was
amazing.
I need to stop watching her, because she would just have me sobbing. And at that point, where I was with like coming to terms with everything, like if I had a day where I would go down a bit of a rabbit hole, like I couldn't get out of it. I was really sad for that whole day. It wasn't until I'd go to sleep, wake up the next day and feel a bit better. But I remember reading some sort of post she wrote, something about like, she had a dream that she heard her non-speaking child's voice for the very first time. And she's like, I don't even remember what he said exactly. She's like, but I just remember it was so calm and so peaceful and so beautiful, and he was so happy. And it was like, when I woke up and came back to reality, it just felt like and she said, I kept thinking about this dream. And she's like, to me, it seemed like it was on the other side. And she's like, I've kind of come to peace with, I perhaps won't hear his voice until I'm on the other side with him. And I was just like, like the whole day being pregnant. I'm like, I wish I never read that. Like I was a mess, because then I was like, oh my God, like I think I really started to think we will never hear his voice, like accepting it, if that makes sense, while still trying to never lose hope. But obviously I just kind of came to terms with the fact that like we might never. So we really started, obviously we went through like PECs and visuals, and the first talker device we used was Proloquo. And I will say too, I think another really hard thing, which also adds to the mum guilt, is though I don't think people understand how hard it is to actually integrate these alternative forms of communication into day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Like it's so hard. And I
Not
think
easy.
no, and it wasn't until we recently transitioned over to LAMP and I just like deep dived into watching YouTube videos of like from the co-creator of LAMP and all of this that I had this like switch in the way that the device should be used and how it should be modeled that I'd never really been exposed to before. And that's what made it feel effortless to actually integrate day to day. Because I always get comments being like, how do you I think people too might be a bit like, I don't know whether my content comes across in a way that people are assuming Jassy uses his device more than what he actually does, but it's very much me just modeling it. But yeah, I kind of had this
Can I
switch of,
touch base there, Kathryn? Sorry to interrupt you. The modelling stage with an AAC is lengthy, and parents are always waiting. When can the child start touching the words for them to spontaneously communicate? But there is so much modelling involved. Could you touch base into that with how you rewired your mindset to my job now with this AAC is to model it for Jassy and then transitioning it to him using it independently?
So I think for us, that AAC was always kind of introduced as almost a requester. I want to say it was kind of for words like stop, go, open, more, that kind of thing. And so it felt like, I don't know, if that's the only words you're really speaking, like you kind of go, oh, like we need to get the iPad to say open, or like it just doesn't feel natural. And
Natural. Yeah.
it's not essentially a voice, it's a requester. And so when we transitioned to LAMP, the same thing did kind of happen. So I remember obviously there's like 3 separate settings of LAMP where you can have just like the one tap where you just tap it once it speaks the word, and then obviously you can like unlock it and it unlocks an entire vocabulary. And so at first, the file he had was essentially just like, stop, go, just like really super, like just basic
Functional words.
words. And again, found myself like, I had got him a ball pit. Like he was watching this like YouTube video, he was fixated on it, of they would pour in like the ball pits that all had different colored balls and they would match it to a fruit color or whatever. He would watch this video and repeat over and over and over. This is one of the first videos I had posted using and modeling the LAMP Words for Life. But he'd loved this video and I'm like, do you want a ball pit? And then he kind of looked at me like, say less, King. I'm ordering a ball pit. So I get this ball pit. It
Hello,
comes,
Amazon.
yeah, Hip Kids actually. But
Oh,
yeah, I ordered the ball pit. I could tell he was excited because for Jassy, that eye contact is like a yes or a
it's
communication. Like,
communication.
you're right. That's what. So if I'm like listing or something on the TV, trying to be like, do you want to watch? I don't know. Like I'll list off movies and I give a break in between each one. I wait to see if he goes like that, and then I'll be okay, I know you want that based off the eye contact. Anyway, sidetrack. But the ball pit finally arrives, and I've got this lamp with like a few words. I'm just going like it, you like it. How the heck? Like, do you know what I mean? It just felt. I was like, this doesn't feel right. And I just was trying to,
Mm,
like, I really wanted to make it work, and I didn't feel like it was working. Like, I would take it out with me, and, like, I felt like there was nothing in context to use and speak. And so, and
mm,
then meanwhile, I've got Lakey here, like my 3-year-old, saying anything and everything he wants. And I'm like, yeah, like, Jassy only has access to say like, stop,
mm.
go, more.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense. So, and I do remember, obviously, like, LAMP Words for Life is all about motor planning. So it's
Mm,
essentially, which I don't feel like I was fully, I had the meeting with the speech at the time, like, to learn obviously about LAMP Words for Life. But to be honest, going from Proloquo, which is very visuals based, like in your face, boom, the visual is literal, to then
mm.
LAMP, which is more abstract because they want the image to represent an abundance of different
Of
words that can be
words.
within
Yeah.
it. So, like, for example, I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that the word please on the homepage was fireworks. I'm like, why would it be fireworks? That makes no sense
Mm,
to me. And the speech was just kind of like, yeah, I know, it's like this and whatever. But then when I went home, and I also was like, oh, how would I add in, like, these family members or whatever? And she's like, oh, please don't, like, change anything or add things. She's like, because you could disrupt, like, the mode of planning, essentially. So I was
okay.
like, how, like, what, how am I meant to? So it was kind of like I would send a list through to add and change things if I wanted things added and whatnot. So then I go home and I'm like, had that first full day trying to use it. I was like, this does not feel functional to me at all. So then I
Mm,
tried to start writing a big list to her. And then I was so confused by my list. And I'm like, it just feels like it makes more sense for me to do it. And I was like,
yes.
I'm sure I'm gonna just do it. So then I like got on Chat GPT. I was talking with that. I was looking at YouTube tutorials, and I learned how to duplicate the file, and I started editing our own file. And I started adding, there's the vocab builder, which, if anyone doesn't
Yeah.
know, a vocab builder is where you add in the words to the vocab, and it only shows those words. Because obviously there's like
Mhm.
hundreds of words in this vocab. It's like a keyboard for vocabulary. And so I started adding all these words. Any time during the day that I used a word, like, say we would get some hot chips, I would add the hot chips, and they're too hot,
Mhm.
hot, too. Oh, we have to wait. They're too hot. So I'd be modeling, like, hot chips, wait, hot. Yeah, they're hot. We need to wait, wait. Like,
Blow.
yeah, I just found it so, it just made sense to me. And I started, like, changing it from this, if you're using a talker as a requester, essentially, so you want them to, like, ask for more, or you want them to choose whatever, it's a demand that's being put on them. It's not something that they feel like is theirs to express themselves. It's a
Mm,
demand that's getting put on them. And so I was, yeah, watching all these videos, and the video, first of all, one of them said one of the main issues he often sees is when they start LAMP Words for Life, they have a very, very limited vocab builder on. He said that can be good in sessions if you're trying to target specific words. He said, but really they should have access to as many words as
whatever the
possible.
words they hear. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, to me, when you think about it, like, if you were to go live overseas and be, for the rest of your life, you're going to go live in Italy, and you hired someone to teach you how to speak Italian, and you were only given 5 words to request, you'd be like, how am I going to go
I'm moving
survive
back
in
to Australia.
Italy?
Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense.
No,
Like,
no.
so I remember I, like, just the ADHD hyperfixation. I was just, like, glued to all
Oh,
these
I
YouTube
love that.
videos.
I love that. Don't put it to your diagnosis. It's more like, no, I'm a mum that wants to make this functional as possible for my son, because those key words of like, more, go, they're great in a therapy session for 40 minutes, but it doesn't represent your reality of hot chips, ball, open, close. And you need to, if we as speech pathologists encourage you as a caregiver to implement the device consistently, we need to use words that are consistent in his vocab. This conversation with Kathryn Denny was simply too good for one episode. Be sure to catch part 2 to continue the conversation.